They talk about how Matt Hardy was home with an injury, and Lita and Edge started traveling together. They had the neck surgery in common. They both had that done, and one thing led to another, and they wound up falling for each other. And they both admitted that they fucked up big time, and Matt Hardy was Edge's friend, and he really did him wrong. They had a ton of heat, which Edge didn't like because he was always a pretty fun-loving guy. He got along with everybody, and now he's kind of been ostracized, and he said he deserved it, but it was a really eerie feeling knowing that he didn't really have any allies. Matt was interviewed a lot, and he went public with everything. I remember watching a big shoot interview with him just months after this happened where he told the whole story. I mean, he took 3 hours to tell this entire thing of how it went down. And Matt's a country boy. You know, I used to live in that part of the country. And, you know, some of those boys down there, the way they deal with something like that, I was really worried that Matt Hardy was going to have some guys go find Edge and just beat the fuck out of him. Or hurt him, or injure him, or God forbid kill him, or something like that. So, you know, Matt Hardy was eventually released because of this, and I remember the internet freaking out about that. Matt Hardy was released unjustly. Basically, they figured somebody had to go. And you're not going to fire Edge. Even though he's the one that made the mistake, he is much more valuable than Matt Hardy. Maybe not broken Matt Hardy, as we've seen. That character is absolutely freaking brilliant. But the Matt Hardy back then, you know, he wasn't going to offer what Edge did. And it was just what WWE had to do. They had to release him. And it sucked, and it was not fair. And the fans, you know, they were vocal. And one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I mean, this was one of the few times that, you know, real life treaded into the fantasy world of wrestling. And WWE wound up hiring Matt Hardy back. I remember when Vince made the announcement that he had hired Matt Hardy back. Hardy had already jumped Edge, I think, backstage, which was another crazy thing to see. I still didn't believe that it was real. I mean, you knew that was a work, but it was still very shocking, and it felt like it was real when they did the spot backstage where Edge and Lita were just walking around, and then Matt Hardy came out of nowhere after being released and not being with the company for several months. He showed, or several weeks, whatever it was, and he showed up and attacked Edge backstage, and they had to pull him apart. And that's when it became apparent that the WWE had re-signed Matt Hardy, and Vince McMahon would wind up making the official announcement like a week or two later. And the fact that these two guys were able to work together is amazing. Edge talked about how he had so much heat and everything that he used that to his advantage. And that affair with Lita, that whole thing, I still to this day believe that that really had a lot to do with Edge's success as a heel, because it gave him so much heat, and he owned it, and he was so good at it. He was so good at being that cocky, arrogant asshole, and he looked the part. He was a great-looking guy. He had a smoking hot girl on his side that he had stolen from somebody else, and now he's got to go out and work a program with this guy. And I'm thinking to myself, how are these guys working together, especially Matt Hardy? Edge, I think, feels legitimately guilty. I don't think he would have any reason to harm Matt Hardy or want to harm Matt Hardy. But Matt, on the other hand, has every reason to take liberties with Edge and maybe give him a few receipts in those matches. I mean, they were working some brutal matches, including cage matches and everything else. So the fact that they were able to come together, they were all able to sit down, it's just something I would not be able to do. If I was Matt Hardy, I would not be able to do what he did. To swallow my pride and come back in and work with the guy that stole my woman and lose the feud. I mean, he got a victory in there somewhere. He beat Edge in a cage on pay-per-view, I believe. I think Edge won the first encounter at SummerSlam. Matt won the second one, and then they did like the loser leaves Raw match or whatever, in which Matt Hardy also lost. So Matt still came out looking like the bitch of this thing. I would assume that everything has been smoothed over. And I guess looking back now, there's probably no hard feelings, but that's some pretty serious real-life shit that went on back then. So I'm glad that it never got uglier than it did. I'm glad it never affected Edge, Lita, or Matt Hardy in really a negative way. They all wound up just fine. They're all happily married, I believe. Maybe not Lita. I'm not sure what her deal is. But we all know where they are in their lives now. And looking back, it's no harm done. But at the time, it was a pretty big deal. And to this day, that feud still fascinates me.